And just like that, we have reached the final lesson of this class. I know. I'm gonna miss you too. But I am delighted to say that I've saved something very special for this last lesson. Today I'm gonna introduce you to a challenging concept, the idea of continuous motion in animation. Now, if you think back to it, everything that you've animated in this class so far has been kind of like this: move and then pause. Even when the object had more than 2 keyframes, like the arrow that you animated twice, it would move, then pause, then click down, then pause, then move, then pause, right? Lots of pauses. Today's challenge is all about animating something that never stands still. Instead of move, pause, this animation is kind of like fast, slow, fast, slow. Each layer on our animation will dance along to that rhythm and never quite come to a halt. Now, this is definitely next level stuff here, but also, at least for me, it's super satisfying and fun to animate. Now, in order to explain this kind of motion, I'm going to need to introduce you to 2 new things. One is the value graph, which is the other graph in the graph editor, the cousin, as it were, to the speed graph. And the other thing is a new kind of keyframe, the super useful but terribly named Auto Bezier keyframe. Both of these are essential to creating continuous motion in After Effects. Now let's start with the value graph. You already know and have been working with the speed graph, and that graphs speed. So unsurprisingly, the value graph graphs values. So that makes sense, right? What are values again? Okay, good question. Yeah, so values are numbers like these. Pretty much every property in After Effects has values. So for example, I can make an opacity animation here. Let me dial this down to 0, okay, make a keyframe. And then I'm gonna move forward in time, somewhere like here, and let me dial this up to 100%. So far, this is everything that you know. No big surprises here, okay? But let me look at this now in the value graph, okay? And over here in the graph on the side, instead of this listing the speed in pixels per second, like in the speed graph, okay? This now lists the values, right? 0, 50, 100%. And it's pretty easy to see that this line here goes from 0 to 100%. Now, something important to note is that these are linear keyframes here, okay? So in the value graph, the line that they make is a diagonal line, which you can read as there being a steady progression of the animation's values over time from 0 to 100. This number basically just goes up and up and up and up, okay? Now, if we look at this in the speed graph, obviously, this is gonna be a straight line, okay? Which means that there's no acceleration or deceleration. If I jump back over here into the value graph, right? Obviously this is a diagonal line, but if I take this value here and move it all the way down, so now this is a straight line, okay? In the value graph, a straight line means no animation at all, okay? Because this is going from 0 to 0 over time, okay? Which means that it's not changing at all right? So the way to understand the value graph is that the more horizontal the line is, the slower the change is happening, okay? Like just say, for example, if I put this up a little bit, even though this now magnified this being the full height of the graph, okay, right now this is going from 0 to 0.4, which is a very, very slight animation, okay? So this is just to show you that the more the line is horizontal like this, the slower the change is, which means that the slower the animation is happening, right? I'm gonna actually put this back to be at 100%, okay? And the more the line is vertical, right? So for instance, if I move this way, right? It'll make more of a vertical line. Now, what did I just do? I moved my keyframes closer together, okay? Which we already know makes the animation happen faster, okay? We could see that in the value graph because this line is more vertical. It's steeper. I'm gonna undo that, okay? Now actually, let me show you something that we haven't talked about before. If I take both of these keyframes and I select them, down here are some pretty excellent buttons, okay? This button will convert these to hold keyframes, okay? That's what this button does. This one converts to linear keyframes. This one converts to Auto Bezier keyframes, which we're gonna talk about a bunch today in this lesson, but which we haven't talked about at all yet, okay? And then this converts to easy ease, like generic ease. Like this is the same as pressing F9, okay? So in any case, to show this point, what I wanna do is make this hold keyframes, right? So I'm gonna press this button, right? And you can see now, if I move my CTI, that this really shows hold keyframes well, okay? Right here, as you remember, This completely horizontal line means that there's no animation change happening at all. There's no change in the values here at all. It's a straight line at 0, okay? And then all of a sudden, it moves completely horizontally over one frame. As you know, this is how hold keyframes work. And now this is 100%, okay? So the more horizontal the line is, including completely horizontal, the slower the change is until it's no change, okay? And the more vertical the line is, the faster the change is until it's like this, like a hold keyframe, where the change happens all over one frame. The ultimate fastness, the ultimate speed of keyframe change. Okay, so now let me add some eases onto this and show you what that looks like, all right? So I'll press this button here with the keyframe selected, boop, okay? Now, let me just compare this right away to the speed graph, because you know the speed graph, right? In the speed graph, this looks like this, the familiar mountain shape, okay? Which means that it's getting faster and it's peaking in speed here in the middle, and then it's getting slower again, right? Here in the value graph, this looks like this, okay? It's kind of an S curve. So that means that this line here is kind of like closer to horizontal for longer, certainly more so than when it was a diagonal line here. You can see that this is like dipping down toward horizontal for longer, which means that the values are changing slower here at the start, okay? And it's the same at the end. It's closer to horizontal longer here at the end, which means that it's easing to a stop, okay? And here in the middle, the line is closest to being vertical, so we know that the values are changing the fastest here. And of course, the faster the values change, the faster the animation is happening too, okay? So now, if I take this and I pull on this handle, I'm really just exaggerating this, right? The more that I pull the handle, the slower the values are changing here at the start, right? So it's easing out more. And the more that I push this handle in, okay, the faster those values are changing at the start. And interestingly, I could take these handles, right? Now in the value graph, you can move the handles like kind of along a diagonal arc like this, all right, to get even finer control over the rate of change, right? But what I could do here is like take this and put this so that it's kind of along this line here, and then take this and put it along its line here and kind of just keep adjusting this. And eventually what I could do is kind of like put this back so that it's like completely linear, like a straight line, okay? Now, another way of looking at that is if I take these, for example, and I just put easy ease on, right? And now with these selected, now I'm gonna press this button to convert those keyframes to auto Bezier, all right? And when I do this, check this out. Boop, okay? Right now, two things have changed. One is that you can see that the handles are now facing right at each other, and this has gone back to being essentially a linear animation or something like a linear animation. Also, now check this out. If I close the graph down, now we have circular keyframes, which is really cool. Auto Bezier keyframes are circles. Okay, so what do Auto Bezier keyframes actually do? Well, in a nutshell, Auto Bezier keyframes find the smoothest way to connect to the previous and next keyframe. So here I have a rotation animation and it involves a speed change. Let's check this out. I've got this star and it kind of rotates quickly at the start and then it hits this speed change wall and then it rotates slowly, okay? There's nothing smooth at all about that transition from fast to slow, okay? This is what Auto Bezier keyframes are good at, all right? So here it is linear, and now just for the argument, I'm gonna take this and put ease keyframes. Boop, F9, right? So let's play this. Now this does not look better, and why? Because it slows down to a stop right here in the middle, and that's not what we want. What we want is a smooth rate of change right there and not a stop, okay? So here's a good shortcut. I've already explained that if I select an easy ease keyframe and command and click on it, I'll make that linear, right? But what I didn't explain is if I once again command and click on this, I will turn that into a circular or Auto Bezier keyframe, which is excellent, okay? So now check this animation out with just the generic Auto Bezier. Right? It's completely smoothed over that speed change, just the way you'd hope it would, okay? And actually, just for the sake of it, I'm gonna take these all and make these linear again, and let's look at this all in the graph, okay? So right here, you can see the situation. I have this ugly bend in the line. It's not even a bend, it's a straight kink, okay? And pretty much any time in the value graph, you should always consider the smoothness of this line here, okay, in the value graph, because anything that isn't smooth in the value graph will make a non-smooth animation visually, all right? So that's just the way that it goes. In the value graph, you kind of always want to make this sort of smooth lines here, all right? So here we go. I'm going to take this and just put my easy ease on again. And you can see definitely not a smooth line, okay? And if we compare this just for a second to the speed graph, right? Remember that what's happening here is it's starting stopped, it's getting faster, and then it's going to stopped again here, okay? And then again here. So if we look at this in the value graph, an important thing to notice is that if the handles of a keyframe are pulled out completely horizontally like this, that means that it will come to a stop in the value graph, okay? As we already know, the more horizontal the line is, the closer it is to no change at all, okay? And same with the handles. When they're pulled out horizontally like this, that means no change, which means that it comes to a stop even if just for a second, all right? So now let me take this and convert this to auto Bezier, which is what we want, right? When I press this right away, okay, boop, you'll see this is now a lot smoother, right? In the graph, okay? The line itself is smoother. So that means that the animation is gonna be smoother as we saw there. But what this also means is that we can adjust this and make this even smoother, okay? Now, with this being an auto Bezier keyframe, the main thing that I want you to notice is that as I move one of the handles, you can see that the other handle is moving symmetrically, kind of in the opposite way. Now, this is not true with any other kind of keyframe handles, only with auto Bezier, okay? So that's a good thing to notice about them, and that's part of the way that they connect things smoothly, right? So if I want to make this even of a smoother transition between here and here, I could take this and kind of curve this, right? And what I want to do is make sure that this doesn't go over this, okay, which would mean that the value actually goes past this, okay? So I just kind of want this to very gently ease in there, okay? And if I pull this handle, I can also kind of make this curve a lot broader and wider, okay? Which means that it looks like this now, right? Basically, the amount of time that it's slowing down now is a lot more, okay? So it's smoother, and it's made it smoother that way by having it glide kind of even more calmly into the final keyframe. Now, one other thing to notice about this is this keyframe, which had been an auto Bezier keyframe, when I start to pull on those handles and adjust this, if I go back here into my timeline, I will see, yep, that this has now become an ease keyframe again. Okay, so that's an introduction to auto Bezier keyframes. They're actually super useful for the kind of work we're doing today, and I'll definitely be showing you more examples of how to use them later on. Now, I need to point out something that's a little bit of a bummer about the value graph. The truth is that I like the value graph more than the speed graph and find it to be often more intuitive. In some way, I'd be happy to use the value graph all the time if I could, but unfortunately, that's impossible. Well, why? Well, because some properties in After Effects either have multiple values or their values aren't really numbers, and so you can't adjust them in the value graph. This is actually really important, so let me break this down for you. So for example, position. Now you know when you make a position keyframe, it has two values, right? It has an X and a Y coordinate. And of course, if it's a 3D layer, it also has a Z coordinate. But let's just keep it 2D here, okay? In any case, those two values being listed here is what makes it odd for the value graph. So that's why it looks like this, okay? There's two lines here, right? Because essentially there's two values that are changing over time. So there's sort of like two values that need to get listed here for one keyframe, okay? And it kind of makes it impossible for the value graph. Now, when it comes to easing, if I take these, I can actually press this button and put generic ease on here. But if you check it out, the value graph doesn't give me handles in this case, right? It will not allow me to adjust these individually. If I wanted to adjust the speed, I'd have to do it in the speed graph as normal because I've got regular handles. So I could do like that. For example, I'm just gonna undo that. Now there is a workaround to this, so you can actually adjust these in the value graph, all right? We actually sort of went over this once, but just let me do this again, all right? If I take my position and I select it, I can right click on it and separate the dimensions, right? And now X and Y are separate properties with their own individual values listed, okay? So that means now back here in the graph, I could take these and put generic ease on them again. right? And it gives me handles. Now, I just want to caution you that the only time that I separate X and Y like this, okay, is when I know for sure that I'm going to be animating X and Y separately. For example, if this square was to enter on screen, by moving straight up and then exit from screen moving straight off to the right or something, okay? And actually, this happens a lot, you definitely have a lot of times where you'll be animating just on X or just on Y. And this kind of workaround works great for the value graph, right? But in a situation like this, where the shape is moving diagonally, AKA along both the horizontal and the vertical axes simultaneously, or if you have a situation where, an object is moving along a curved motion path, then having these handles here actually is kind of strange, all right? If I don't adjust these together, the position animation changes often in kind of unexpected or definitely unwanted ways, right? So I could take these, for example, and adjust them together, and this will work just fine. Like I could delay the end and have it, start fast and ease into the end, right? So that would look like this. Pretty much the exact same as if I had done this in the speed graph, right? So I can adjust them together, the handles here in the value graph with X and Y separated, but I have to adjust them together, okay? Because if I get in here and I start adjusting just one of these on its own, check out what happens, right? If I pull this back now, you'll see that now I've actually made a curved motion path here, which is not at all what I want, okay? And that just gets worse and worse. If I were to pull this out here and pull this out here and just put some really funky kind of curves on here, then what would happen is I would completely change the way that this moves. So check this out. Yeah, and that is not what I want. So yeah, when it comes to position animation, if the motion is diagonal or curved in any way, then you need to adjust those keyframes in the speed graph. And it's not just position, so check this out. Yeah, so some properties list their values as something else other than numbers. So for example, masks. I have an animation here where I have this green square and it's being masked on by this mask here, okay? And if I actually select a keyframe and go down over here, you can see that there's no values associated with this keyframe, right? Same with this one, right? And so that means that if I take these and I pull them into the value graph, well, it won't let me at all, okay? After Effects says no, because right here, if I click on the value graph, it still keeps me in the speed graph, okay? It won't even let me go into the value graph here, okay? It says nuh-uh. And that is really true of anything with path, okay? You can't open anything with path at all here in the value graph, or this is actually the speed graph, right? So here, for example, if I turn this off, let me show you. I can get my pen tool up here and I can just make a generic line, okay? And here, let me just animate this a little bit. All right, so make a path keyframe here, and I'll go forward, and I don't know why this got all curved, but let me make this straight again, okay? So that's my animation, it goes like that, okay? Great, but if I take these keyframes and try to pull them into the value graph, again, nah. After Effects says nope, and it keeps me here in the speed graph, all right? You just can't animate things without values like path, right, in the value graph. This is also kind of true for colors, sort of. Colors are a little bit more like position, all right? So here, if I make a generic color animation here on this line of my stroke color, okay? So I made a keyframe for the black color or gray, whatever it was, and now let me make a red, or let me make this purple or something, okay? Great. So now, as you know, this is just changing from gray to purple, all right? But if we look at this in the graph, now this is the value graph. It will actually let me open this in the value graph, which is why it's kind of more like position, okay? Because colors are listed with red, green, and blue properties. This is actually blue, green, and red here. I think they color code them so you can know which is which. Yeah, in any case, it's like position in that it just can't change it can't graph all these changes to 3 different properties essentially in one keyframe in this graph here, okay? So you can only adjust colors in the speed graph. So the value graph is awesome, but some properties just can't be adjusted there. In particular, position, unless the dimensions have been separated. Now that you're more familiar with the value graph, we can finally start talking about continuous motion. For this next example, I'm going to focus on making smooth speed changes in a fast, slow, fast animation situation. So the way that I'm picturing this shot in my head is that the circle starts really small, okay, then it scales up quite quickly, And then there's a slow drift where it gets a little bit bigger, and then it scales up again very quickly until it fills the frame. So this is like 3 different scale animations in a row, with the rhythm being fast, slow, and fast. Okay, so let me check this out just with linear keyframes so you can see what it looks like. Right? And what we see is that there's very abrupt, ugly speed changes, right? If I take this and look at this in the graph, you can see that this line it very abruptly changes. There's no smoothness to this, okay? So that's why you're feeling that so much in the animation. So let me take these now and put on generic ease, okay? And let's look at that. Now this isn't what we want either. In particular here on this 3rd keyframe, we can see that it really comes to a stop there. And remember, we're working on continuous motion here, so we never want things to come to a stop, okay? So another thing is that right here at the start, we do not want the animation to be delayed at the start and at the end, actually. What we want is more like a match cut situation here. Let me get in a little closer to my graph, and I'm gonna take this, and I'm just gonna push this back like that now that I have a handle on it. And I'm gonna take this one, and I'm gonna push this one, back like this, okay? We want essentially like fast start and a very fast end, okay? So then, here's the big trick here, is I'm gonna take these 2, okay? And I don't want these as ease keyframes. What I want is for these to be auto Bezier keyframes, right? So I'll press this button here. Now right away, that'll do this. Here, we can actually watch that. And that's not what we want either, right? The animation comes to a stop here in the middle. And again, we want continuous motion, okay? But this is a really good place to start, because what this does is it gives us symmetrical handles, again, on these keyframes that we can adjust the in and out together. So let me do that for this first one. What I want is to pull this handle out 100% that way, okay? So I have this familiar curve here now, which is our match cut in, all right? It starts with no pause at all, and it's basically just decelerating madly the whole time, okay? And let me do that again on the other side where it's accelerating madly into the cut. So I'll just pull this 100% this way, okay? And this is pulled 100% that way. Now, right now, this is not gonna be what we want either, okay? If I play this down, right now, because I've pulled these handles and held down on shift while I did it, I don't know if I explained that, but when I did this adjustment, I held down on shift, okay? And that snapped the handles to be totally horizontal, okay? Both of these handles are completely horizontal now. And when you have horizontal handles in the value graph, that means the animation comes to a stop, okay? It moves the line, so it's horizontal, and you know that when things are completely horizontal in the value graph, they're stopped, okay? So what I kind of want to do is adjust between here and here now, okay? And really, essentially what I want to do is turn this back into something kind of like a linear animation between here and here. I just want a straight diagonal line that connects these 2 points, okay? So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to go to this first one, and I'm going to get in a bunch, all right? And now you can see that the angle is up here and my handle's here. It's really hard to see that when you're pulled all the way back. So what I'm going to do is, let me move this way, okay? So you can kind of see as I adjust this, all right, I am going to be adjusting this other side of it, but I'm not going to be, but the handle is going to continue to be pulled out 100%. So I don't really have to like worry about that. As long as this is still pulled this way, this is doing what I want, okay? So I'm going to press plus here to get in closer. I'm going to take this handle and I'm going to do 2 things. One is I'm going to move it down so that it's moving exactly along this line here, okay? Again, I'm going to make this into a diagonal linear-like animation here. The other thing that I'm going to do is pull the handle back toward the keyframe a little bit, all right? Because the closer this handle is to the keyframe, just like the less play that this is going to have, where it could accidentally be pulling this line at a curve here, okay? So I'm going to, with my V arrow selected, I'm going to press the space bar and hold down on it, and that gives me my hand, okay? Now I can kind of grab this and move this over this way. And I want to move it here so that I'm showing more of the, you know, this animation here and less of that curve, okay? And now I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to grab this, pull this back, and then just drop this down so that it's kind of along the red line here, okay? And I'm going to actually move back, just make sure that this is still, yeah, so that looks good there, okay? Sometimes when you adjust one handle, it kind of messes up the other. But here's what our animation looks like now. This is a very smooth line, okay? Fast animation, slow animation, and fast animation, but it's all super smooth now. So check this out, right? And there you go, fast, slow, fast. Very, very smooth, okay? So this could be done here, but I actually want to show you one other thing just to make this look a little bit cooler, all right? So I'm going to select this, and I'm actually going to duplicate this. And okay, I'm going to go here, and this circle, what I want to do is make this the same color as like my background color here, okay? I'm going to press U, and I'm going to go to the last frame here, and I'm going to walk back one frame here. And let me turn this off for 1 sec. This is the frame where the orange circle is almost completely filling the frame, but not quite, okay? In one more frame, it will fill the frame, okay? So this is the frame where I'm going to turn on and start this second circle. I'm gonna left bracket move it so it starts right here, okay? So now this circle is small as this animation, as the big orange circle is almost finishing up, okay? So I'm gonna kind of widen this out. And now here is the equivalent frame on the other end, right? It's right here. This circle now, the sort of pinker circle, is right, like in the next frame, it's gonna fill the frame completely. So I'm gonna set the end of my work area right here, okay? And this is my loop point. So check this out. Yeah, and this is a really fun and really dynamic loop here. And in some sense, this is kind of like what I'll be animating today, and definitely a little bit like your final project on some level, okay? And that is, it has continuous motion, and it loops, and it's got a fast, slow, fast kind of pace. I love that. I think that looks really cool. Continuous motion loops are really pleasing to our eyes. There's just something super hypnotic about them. You can kind of just keep watching them and watching them and watching them. And honestly, I think that's probably why they're so popular on social media. Right on. So now I'm ready to put it all together into more of a complex example with lots of pieces, all of which will keep moving without stopping. So before we get going on this, let me just play this down so you can see the artwork and hear the music. Yeah, so that's a really cool, fun little loop that we're gonna make, okay? And I should mention that the artwork for this was designed by Frank Suarez, the art director of School of Motion, and it's meant to look a little bit like your final project, but we'll talk about that later on, okay? And the music for this was written and performed by a wonderful musician named Jen Pegg, who runs a music and sound design company in LA called Cathead Noise. So super fun, and also Jen made the music for your final project, okay? Cool. So I'm gonna animate this, and we're gonna do it in a continuous motion way, and I'm gonna do it while you watch, okay? So the first thing that I wanna do is kind of try to figure out how this is gonna animate, right? It's always good to have a sense of what you're gonna do before you do it. So the way that I wanna do that in this case is to kind of pay attention to the artwork and see what that suggests, okay? So basically what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make a transition from A to B, and then from B to C, and then from C back to A again, okay? So actually, 2 of the 3 transitions involve this B shot here, so I'm gonna start by looking at this, all right? So basically, this is fairly limited in terms of the way that it can move, all right? So paying attention to the artwork, what I see here, okay, is I've got 4 triangles, and those are kind of the central objects here, other than the B's, okay? This triangle is pointed this way, and this triangle is pointed this way, which is right, okay? And these 2 are pointed left, okay? So what this really suggests to me is a position animation for these triangles that kind of starts in the center and moves out, okay? And that's a screen direction. From the center out is a really good way to kind of plan this transition, okay? Because that will allow me to not only animate position like this, but also, for example, this B here in the corner. If the anchor point for this is in the center of the comp, and this gets bigger, then it will be moving from the center out, okay? So that scale animation would actually match a position animation of these objects, okay? So that's the way I'm gonna animate this shot here primarily, is using position and scale to have things go from the center out, okay? So in other words, I've got to do the same thing when I kind of go into it as well, right? So here on the A, for example, this circle here and this circle here, just for example, like everything will move, but this circle here can move this way, you know, from the center out, and this circle here can move from the center out. Same with this and this, okay? And then that will be the match on our transition here into the B's, things moving from the center out. And kind of actually, it's gonna be the same way on the other end, right? Because there's really no other way for these triangles to move other than out, okay? So I imagine they're gonna kind of come in and then they're gonna drift in this direction. And then here at the end, they're gonna kind of blow out again in that same direction, right? And then what that means is if I look at my C here, okay, and I just pay attention to the artwork, one thing that I notice right away are these triangles here. These are kind of pointing outward again, okay? So I can have these move from the center and out. These are kind of like, that's sort of how they want to move, all right? So that transition from here to there, I'm also gonna do from the center out. And if this doesn't make sense, I'm gonna talk about this a whole bunch, so I'm sure it will, okay? And then finally, here at the end / beginning, I think I'm gonna do a rotation transition from here to here, because both of these things have like symmetrical rotation possibilities. Like this definitely looks like this circle wants to kind of animate and these circles want to move like this way. These triangles can also kind of rotate that way, same with these circles, even same with the big C in the middle. So I think I'm gonna do a rotation transition back to the beginning, because these circles here and these sort of rounded rectangles, these all look like they can rotate very nicely, okay? So that's my like basic plan of how I think I'm gonna animate it. So let me actually, what I wanna do now is get in here and I'm gonna start with the A, and first I'm just gonna set this all up for the animation, and then I'll start and I'll make the A side of the transition to the B, okay? I'm gonna do the beginning of this at the end when I finally get to the C so that I can kind of loop the C and the A together, right? So I'm gonna start with A, I'm gonna set this all up for animation. Great, so I'm gonna jump in here. And all right, so here's all my layers and stuff. And okay, so what do I wanna do here? Well, first of all, I definitely wanna make a null object and connect these circles to the null, all right? Anytime that I have something like this, 4 objects and they're sort of scattered around, same with these A's actually. I wanna make a null and put it right in the center and parent those to the null so that I can rotate these symmetrically or scale them symmetrically as well. So that's how I'm gonna start. Shift Option Command Y to make a null, right? And I'll call this circle null. Really good to label your nulls, right? And I'm gonna drop this on top of these circle layers here, and I'm gonna grab them and I'll just parent those all to the circle null, okay? And I can actually turn that off. And now I'm gonna make another null. I'll call this my A null. It's like A null, okay, cool. So I'll take this, drop this down above the A's, and I'm gonna take all the A's and let me now parent that to the null, okay? And I can actually turn the null off. Great. Okay, now to set this up, I kind of have an idea here of how I want something to work, okay? And this is gonna be a little bit of a complicated rig. Actually, this is gonna be the most complicated thing I think I'm gonna set up for this whole animation, okay? So what I want is a mat, essentially, that fits in right here, okay? I've got these 2 rounded rectangles here, right? And then I've got these kind of circles that are inside of them. And I want these circles so that if I make them bigger, for example, or if I move them in this direction or how, however I move these, that I actually want the circles to kind of like, be contained within here. So if I move this way, I don't actually want to see this half of the circle. I want it to be matted into this sort of empty space between this line and this line, okay? I'm gonna undo that. So how would I set this up? Well, this is kind of cool, right? So what I'm gonna do is, first I'm gonna start with my large rounded rectangle, and I'm gonna duplicate this, right? I'm gonna put this on top, and I'm gonna call this mat, right? And let me just solo this real quick. So right now, this is just the same as the large rounded rectangle. If I dig into this, I see in my contents here, I have a path and a stroke, but I have no fill. Okay, right now this is empty and I want this filled in. So what I could do is select a large rounded rectangle and go up here to the add menu and choose a new fill, right? And put that on. And now you can see that it's filled that in and it's chosen obnoxious red for some reason, okay? And what I can actually do now is take this stroke and just like delete that. I don't want that, okay? So this is good now. I've got my large rounded rectangle and it's filled in. So now I've also got this small rounded rectangle here, right? You can kind of see the outline of it here. And what I could do is take this small rounded rectangle and copy this, okay, right here just by clicking on this top level folder, and I hit Command C. I'm gonna go back here to my mat and select Contents. I'm gonna Command V, paste that rectangle in there, okay? So now both of those are on one layer, okay? And what I'm gonna do actually is, this has a path and a stroke but no fill as well. So I'm gonna go up here to the add menu and put a fill on that, okay? So now that has a fill as well. I'm gonna delete the stroke. Okay, so now I've got 2 filled objects here. So what I want to do is go up here to the add menu one more time and choose merge paths, because what I want to do is knock the center out from the hole. Okay, so if I choose merge paths right away, that's not doing what I want. In fact, it put a different stroke and fill on there, and I want to delete this stroke. You can see here it's quite wide, right? I'm just going to delete that. Okay, and now with the merge path selected, what I want to do is just pull down this drop down to subtract. Okay, and now this is exactly what I want. It's sort of like a rounded donut or something, not rounded, a squared off and rounded donut, whatever. Bad idea. Okay, so now this is kind of interesting. What I want is this mat to move along with these shapes here, with the small rounded rectangle and the large rounded rectangle, okay? But right now, these are both in one layer, okay? So I can't just like parent these to one another, okay? Because I have one mat layer and I have two different shape layers with those two shapes on it, okay? So parenting is not gonna work because parenting would just parent essentially both of those shapes together. So this is what I have to do. Now this is a good keyboard shortcut that I haven't mentioned yet, but there's a backtick/tilde button right here. Okay, and if you press that while hovering over any of the panels, boop, you will now open that panel full screen, okay? And then I could just press tilde/backtick to go back here. So wherever I'm hovering, when I press that, it will make that full screen, right? Like this, or even my properties panel, whatever, okay? So I'm gonna hover over my timeline and press that, okay? I just want some more screen real estate so I can kind of look at this all together here, right? So kind of what I wanna do is connect the small rounded rectangle here to this small rounded rectangle, and this one to this one as well. So as these animate, okay, specifically on scale and rotation, okay, I want these to scale and rotate with these, okay? So how am I gonna do this, right? Well, here we go. I've revealed the regular scale and rotation now for these two shape layers, okay? Now what I want to do is get into the contents menu for my shape layer here. So in my large rounded rectangle, for example, I've got this transform folder here, and that's got a scale and a rotation here, okay? And right now the scale here is set to 100 and the rotation is set to 0, which is the same as the scale and rotation values for the large rounded rectangle, okay? So, and again, just to make this clear, I am not looking at the contents here of my large rounded rectangle, which also has a folder exactly the same as this. No, I'm connecting this to the regular transforms of this layer, okay? I just wanna make that clear. So here, I'm gonna use the property pick whip kind of in place of the larger parenting pick whip, all right? So I'm gonna take the scale here of this shape and I'm going to connect it to the scale of this layer here, okay? And I'm gonna do the same thing with the rotation. I'm gonna connect this to the rotation of that, all right? And then I'm going to close that down and go into my small rounded rectangle, open the transform there, and I'm gonna do the same thing here, where I property pick whip from the scale of that to the scale of the small rounded rectangle now, and the rotation of this small rounded shape here to the rotation of the small rounded rectangle. Great. Okay. Additionally, I'm going to do one other thing here that I think is going to be helpful. If I select these and press UU, okay, right now these have a path, okay, and these have a path here, okay. So I actually want to connect those paths as well, just in case I ever want to animate that path, okay. So for my large rounded rectangle, here's the path, and I'm just going to take that and property pick whip that to here, the path of the large rounded rectangle, okay? And here for the small rounded rectangle in my mat, I'm gonna do the same thing and property pick whip the path of that to the path of the small rounded rectangle, the separate layer. Okay, great. Great, so now I can close all that up and I'm gonna press tilde again, boop, and reveal this again, okay? So, awesome. Now what this means is, if I take my small rounded rectangle, for example, right, and I press R and I rotate this, now the inside of this mat rotates along with that, okay? We're only looking at the mat right now. Same with, if I scale this, now only that scales, right? And I have that control over both of these, right? So I can rotate the outside or the inside independently as well as scale them both, okay? So that's really cool. And I just wanna point out that if I press UU and I look at the path for example, my large rounded rectangle, if I turn that on again, select this again, now I've got these points here, okay? We've been over path animation a little bit. So if I take this now and I move these points, it will also do the same thing for the mat, okay? So it's sticking with it no matter what, all right? So I've rigged this up really nicely like that. Okay, great. So now I've got my mat and actually I can turn this off and put this at the bottom and just like lock that, okay? Because all I ever want to do is just track matte things into that, but this doesn't ever need to animate separately, okay? So let me actually go ahead and do that. Let me take my circles now and track matte those by pick whipping those to the matte, okay? Great. So now those are matted in there. And what that means is if I, for example, scale this up, now those are kind of contained within there, right? And that's super cool, and that's just what I'm looking for. Okay, so now this is all set up now and ready for animation. Great, so what I'm gonna do is, what I want is for this to be like a 10 frame animation on this side. So I'm just gonna move back 10 frames from the end, and I can set a marker there so I know where that is, right? And now I'm just gonna start animating this basically, right? And all right, I'm gonna start from the top here. So actually right here at the end, I do wanna animate the path. So I press UU and I'm gonna make a a path keyframe right here. Then I'll go to the end, okay? And let's see what I wanna do here. Now, I definitely wanna make this animate symmetrically. So I'm gonna grab just these points here, okay? And I'm gonna use my arrows and I'm gonna hold down on shift and kind of click this over like maybe 4 clicks, right? And I'm gonna take this side and I'm gonna do the same thing here. 1, 2, 3, 4. And it looks like I maybe did it 3 on the other side. Okay, great. And so I've made that little animation there where that widens out. And let me do that again for my larger rounded rectangle. I'll press UU, here's my path, make a path keyframe, go to the end here, and let me grab this side first. Okay, and I'll do 1, 2, 3, like that. Actually, I had this move 3, so let me move this more. Actually, I'm gonna move this so that the rounded edge is already completely off the screen here, I think. I think that will look good. This is kind of exaggerated, but let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That should be the same there. Okay, great. And I'm gonna take these and select them and press U, and then press U again to reveal just the path. And take these and, actually, I'll leave these linear for now. I'll just put all the E's on at once. Okay. Well, actually, because these are path animations, I won't be able to work it in the value graph, but whatever, I'll do this all later. Okay, so here, the A in the center, all right? So actually, I think this can have a path animation as well. So check this out. If I press UU, I can reveal the path. Now for A, I actually have 2 path properties because I have the outside shape and I have this inside cutout shape here, okay? So I need to make path keyframes for both of those right there. Okay, now I'll go to the end, okay? And check this out. I'm gonna take this here and I'm gonna grab just the path points that are on the right, okay? And now I'm gonna pull this, actually I'm gonna use my arrow keys, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, okay? Something like that. Now I'm gonna pull this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8, okay? So now that's symmetrical, but looking at this now, I think it'd be even cooler if the A was kind of matted so that when it passed over here, we couldn't see it. We could only see it kind of in the middle here. So what I'm gonna do is take this and also pull the track matte pull down till that says matte, okay? Now right away, that's gonna make my A disappear. But if I press this button here, I will invert the matte, okay? And now when the A is in the inside, we can see it, but as it moves over, we can't see it wherever it's inside the matte here, all right? So that's pretty cool. All right, so let's see, I select all those and squeeze those down. Okay, so now I've got my circles. All right, so what I'm gonna do is animate these circles so they're moving horizontally, all right, all of them actually. So what I'm gonna do is press P, and what I'm gonna do is just get in here and select the position, and now I wanna separate the dimensions, all right? So I'm gonna right click and separate the dimensions, and I'm gonna make an X position keyframe for all of those right here, and then I'll select them all, press U, and reveal just the X position, all right? I'm gonna go to the end. So, let's see, so the one on the right, let's do the right and left first. So I'm gonna have this move right off screen, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Maybe I'll keep it halfway on, halfway off, all right? Let me do the same thing for the left circle. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, okay? So that's there. And now these, I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna have this one move over a little bit this way and have this one move over a little bit this way. I feel like that's the right thing to do. So I'm gonna go like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, okay? And what's nice about this is gonna be moving in the same direction, but a lot less, like a lot slower than this and a lot slower than the other pieces like these rounded rectangles in the A. So I think it's gonna create some motion contrast there. So let me do this with this one as well. Select this, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, I think it was, yep. Great. So those are all moving like that now. Okay. And finally, let me take my A null. Okay. And I'm going to make a scale keyframe. And then I'm going to go to the end here. And I'm just going to scale these so they go like not fully off screen. Let me move this down a little bit, but kind of up and into the corner. I don't know, like that or something. I think that looks cool. And additionally, I want to add one more little animation here into the A's here, just as something to make it a little bit more fun. So right now, these all have their anchor points in the center, which is where I want them. Okay, so I'm going to select all of these, and I'm going to put a little rotation animation here on the A's as well. Okay, so it's sort of like they're also moving out to the edges of the frame from the center, and they're also kind of rotating out from the center as well. So check this out. If I put Option R and make a rotation keyframe, go here to the end. So now this first one is here in the upper left here. So I want to have this rotate kind of this way, okay? So let's just say to -45, all right? And then the next one here in the upper right, I'm going to have that go 45, okay? So that's pointing out. So there, again, it's moving the action out, away from the center, okay? And then let's see, for this next one, this would be -45. Sorry, that one is 45. I take that back. Okay, symmetrical. And then this one's -45. Yeah, like that. Okay, great. So now this starts here and goes like that, right? And that's a pretty nice animation. Everything is moving, right? So I'm going to take all of these keyframes now, and I'm going to press F9. Boop. Okay, and also I've got ones up here. Let me reveal those by pressing U, and I'm going to select those and press F9 as well. All right, so now everything has generic E's on it, okay? So these four up here, these are all path keyframes, so I'm going to do these together because I have to do these in a speed graph, right? So the way these are going to work is, this shouldn't surprise you, is they're going to delay a lot and then be moving really fast at the end, like that, okay? And I'm going to use pretty exaggerated handles here today, but of course, you should experiment with this when you work on your final project. Okay, so now let me work on these circles. I'm gonna grab all of these, okay, and jump with these into the graph. And now let me get in a little closer and move this over here. So the way these are gonna work, I can adjust these all together here, is that these also are gonna delay like crazy and then be accelerating madly into the cut, right? Very similar to how we would do this in the speed graph. I'm just pulling these handles here and pushing those, okay? Let me jump out of my graph, and okay, so I've got scale animation here and rotation. I think I can do these all together in the graph, in the value graph, right? So one thing about the graph is that since it graphs values, like my scale has different values, so that's like up here and the rotation's down here, okay? But I can adjust these all together since this is a fairly easy adjustment. I'm just pulling this way and pushing these this way, okay? We've done this like 1,000 times before. Cool. We did it in the speed graph, I should say, not in the value graph. But all right, so let's jump back into the main comp and let's see the start of this transition in action. Yeah, and that's looking really fun right away, okay? Great, so now let me jump into my B pre-comp. And before I start animating, let me just make sure that everything's set up the way I want, okay? Okay, what I want is to make a null for these B's, so I'm going to Option Command Y and call this my B null. All right, move this down on top there, actually here, because that's my center B, and I'm going to take all these other ones, the B's that are in the corner, and parent that to the null. Okay, great. So let me move 10 frames, and I'm going to make a composition marker up here just so I know this is where this is, and I'm also going to turn the null off just so I don't have to see it. Great. Okay, so this is going to animate on position. Let me start with these triangles. I've got my triangle gradient here and the triangle gradient here. These are kind of the main movers of the action on some level. All right, so I'm going to get in here and I'm going to separate the dimensions for all of these. So that's also part of the setup. So I'm going to select the position, then command and click on all these just to select them all, and then right click on here and separate the dimensions. All right, and then I'm going to make X position keyframes because these are only animating on the X. I told you it happens very frequently that way, okay? So, all right, so this is where they wind up. So where are they starting? Well, let me do this symmetrically. So I'm actually gonna put on my title action safety by pressing the quote button. So I have a sense of where like the middle is here. And I'm gonna move this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 clicks, okay? And I'll do this on the other side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 clicks, okay? Great. And then also with these, the sort of stroked ones, I'm going to move these so these actually move even farther. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, something like that, okay? All right, so those are there and they're symmetrical and they widen out. Again, we're starting from the center and we're moving out. And the reason that I had these move at different rates is just to add some kind of contrast in there, just so it's more interesting, right? So that not everything's moving at the exact same rate, right? Anytime you can add in any contrast, whether it's the motion or the color or anything, it often helps your animation. Cool, so what am I gonna do with this bee here now? See, right at the start, it's kind of ugly because it's kind of being covered up. Well, what I want to do is scale this, okay? Because scale, again, is like starting in the center and moving outward, right? Especially in the center, because that means that the left side of the bee essentially will be moving to the left, and the right side of the bee will be moving to the right, all right? So I'm gonna go here and make a scale keyframe for my bee, and then go back to the beginning, pressing home, and let me dial this down, okay? So that it's fitting in there better, all right? So something like 10%, okay? Great. So this would then go like that, all right? So it's definitely like opening out from the outside, from the inside out. Okay, finally, let me select my B null and I'm going to make another scale animation for this. So I'll go to frame 10, option S to make a scale keyframe, go back to the beginning. And let's see, I don't want this to move too much, just a little. So maybe like, yeah, from like 80% to 100%, okay? Great. And additionally, I'm gonna do the same thing on the Bs that I did on the As and have them rotate as well. Yep, and those anchor points are in the center. So I'm gonna option R. Great, and press K to go back here. And so those were moving, actually, all right, so first I wanna copy and paste all these position keyframes at 0 here, right? So they land in the right position. Great, and now if I go back to the beginning, how do I wanna have these rotate? Well, the A on the other side was it rotated negative 45 in. So I want this to be rotating this in the same screen direction, right? This is always slightly confusing, but the A here is rotating out, okay? Like that. So I want the B also to be rotating in that same direction, which is counterclockwise, okay? So in order for the B to rotate counterclockwise, I have to move this way, okay? So I'm gonna make this positive 45 on this one. I suppose that makes this one negative 45. And then this one here is symmetrical to the one on top, so that's minus 45, okay? Is that right? Yeah, and then 45. Yeah, okay, so then these are all moving out. Okay, great. Okay, so now I've got all the keyframes in place, and these are all position, scale, or rotation. Okay, so I could take these now and grab them all, press F9 and bring these into the value graph, all right? So this is like a big tangle of spaghetti, but it's pretty easy to do what we're gonna do because we're just taking these handles and pushing them back to the start and taking these handles and pulling them back to the start essentially, okay? Right, we all basically know how to do this. We've done this in the speed graph a bunch of times. So let's actually check out that animation transition now, just like this. Yeah, and that's really fun. That's like a really good start of this transition. So let's keep moving on, okay? Let me jump in here to my B, and now this gets into like, you know, a little bit of unfamiliar territory because actually let's plan the transition out first. Before we do the drift in the middle, I think it'd be better if we just plan the transition to C. Okay, so here I am at the end. Let me jump back 10 frames because I also want this to be a 10 frame move. Just gonna make a composition marker there. Great, and let's work on these gradient triangles first, okay? So for one, I'm just gonna copy these position keyframes right here, okay? And then I'm gonna adjust them just a little bit. So for this gradient triangle here, I want this over the course of the shot to be drifting a little bit more to the left, okay? In the direction that it was already moving, right? So I'm gonna just knock this over with my arrow keys and shift like one more notch, okay? So I think it moved like 10 pixels, 20 pixels, okay, to the left. Great. And then here at the end, now I'm gonna have this move much farther, like this, okay? Something like that. And let me actually match this on the other side now with the other gradient triangle. So I have it move one more click over while holding down on shift, which was 20 pixels. And I can always check that by looking here. This is 900. Yep, this is 920 here for the values. Okay, great. And now I'm gonna go to the end and do the same thing where I move this off like this, okay? And that should be symmetrical to the other side. Great. So let me actually take these and look at these keyframes in the graph, in the value graph, okay? And this is a lot like what we worked on with the circle in a fast, slow, fast example, all right? We've got these coming in, and then we've got to make this drift in the middle, all right? And right now, this is funky. You can see that the line kind of bends here. And also we need to work on this one at the end. Okay, so I'm gonna take that one first, and I'm gonna just drag that handle like that, okay? This handle has already been pulled back like that, so that's good. Now I'm gonna take these, and I'm gonna kind of break this one for a sec, because I have to put auto Bezier on here. And I just used regular ease when I built it in the first place, but that's fine. I know how I want to interpolate. Okay, so if I click this, now that changes it, but again, I'm gonna hold shift, and just pull, actually I don't wanna do them both at once, just one, okay? I'm gonna hold shift and pull this out this way, and then I'm gonna do the same thing on this side where I kind of shift it to get it vertical and then pull it out this way. Okay, and right now these come to a stop here. So what we wanna do is get in here and make this look more like a linear animation. Okay, so I'm gonna take this and push this back this way, something like that, and take this one and adjust this so that it's just along its own red line here, and I'm gonna kind of push this back. And additionally, I'm just gonna kind of get in a little bit closer here and just make sure. Well, here's how you get in closer if your graph won't let you, is you press this button here, which auto zooms the graph, okay? And then I can choose my zoom tool, which is the magnifying glass. The shortcut is Z. Okay, so if I press Z, I'll choose my zoom tool. And now I can get down here, for example, and move really close to this and just make sure, I'm gonna choose my regular arrow, that this now lines up exactly with that line. Now I'm gonna use my hand tool and just kind of drag down here till I find the other one. And looks like I did a pretty good job, but you can't hurt to like get in really close and just set that perfectly along the line, okay? Then I'm going to press this auto zoom and it'll give me my graph back and I can zoom back out again, all right? Cool, so we could just watch that one in motion, right? And that's pretty smooth. It stops, it slows down, it's fast, slow, fast, but it never stops moving, okay? We could also, if we want, make this move farther or whatever, but I think it's fine for now. I think I want to see that with the whole animation. All right, so let me do this on the other side now. Okay, I've got the animation in place, but let me just adjust this. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to shove this all the way back. The one at the start is already like that. I'm going to take these two, press this button to put on Auto Bezier, select this one, shift and just drag it back. Now I'm going to shift and drag this back, right? Okay, so now these come to a stop, which I don't want, and I'm going to get in closer and do this. Okay. Cool. And we can always double check those by turning the auto zoom off and pressing Z. Looks like I did a really good job. Great. So let me get back and let's look at both of those together. Yep, it's symmetrical. They both move fast, then drift, then move fast, okay? It's exactly what I want. Cool, so we are doing this. So, okay, so let me do these stroke triangles now, all right? So these I'm gonna have move more, okay, through the middle, like a little more. I moved the regular gradient triangles just 1 click or 20 pixels, so I'm gonna do these 2 clicks, maybe 3 clicks for 60 pixels, okay? I'll do this 1, 2, 3, cool. And then I'm gonna go to the end here and let me move this completely off to like here or something. Okay, and then I'll do the same thing here. Like that. Okay, great. And I think I can adjust these both in the graph at the same time. So let me select both of those and pull those in here, okay? So what I want to do is, first of all, just make sure that these ones at the end, which were just selected, are pushed back. And then I could take both of these sets and put Auto Bezier on there, okay? And take both of these and pull this back that way, and then take both of these and pull that back this way, okay? And now actually, it's probably easier to adjust these one by one at this point. So let me just do this one first and take this and push this back like this. And actually, let me get in closer so I can make sure I'm doing this evenly. Great, like that. And take this one, push this back like that, all right? I'm sure this makes sense to you, but just in case it doesn't, it's like drifting like a linear animation through the middle here with no like curvature at all on there, okay? I'm just gonna get in closer and make sure I've got this. Looks like I'm a little off. Okay, push this way, okay. I think it's really important to adjust these things very, very precisely. You'd be surprised at how like little things like this will add little hitches into your animation. Cool. Jump out of that. Great. And now let me do the other one, which is the stroke. Okay. This. Boop. Oh, I already did that. I'm sorry. No, I just need to adjust this. These already have Auto Bezier on there. Okay, silly me. Cool. And let me get in close to this one. And just make sure it's along that line there. Always very fiddly. Great. And this one looks pretty good. Okay, cool. So now we've got all the triangles happening together. It looks like this. Fast, slow, fast, right? And with some contrast there, that's very nice because like you see this pull ahead of this, just adds some interest in there, okay? Great, so got that going on. Now let's close these down and we'll work on our B. Now the B, okay, right now it scales on, but for when it moves off, I think I wanna do the same thing that I did kind of with the A and animate the path so that I can have this part of the B move further this way and this side of the B move further that way, okay? So I'm gonna press UU and okay, the B has 3 different path animation keyframes because it's got the outside and then the 2 sort of window panes. So I'm gonna make keyframes for all of those. Press U and then U again, right? And now let me go to my end here. And this isn't that hard actually. Even though there's 3 keyframes, all I have to do is kind of arrow over here and select these. And now I can like just move all of these at once. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, okay, something like that. Let me select all these. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, that's sort of fun. And I'm gonna put ease on there. Great. And this I have to adjust in the speed graph, as you know. So I'm just gonna do this really quickly, like this and like this. Speed graph is old hat to you at this point. So great. Okay. And now this is not gonna drift in the middle in terms of the path, but what I can do to keep the B moving is just keep it scaling up just a little bit, right? And I don't want the scale to kind of keep scaling sort of to the end here, right? And I'm gonna have this get to like, I don't know, something like maybe 105. So not tremendously bigger, but just a drift, right? And this animation, if we look at this, this is gonna be slightly different, but similar, okay? I'm gonna take this here because I don't want it to come to a stop here. I want it to smoothly connect the first keyframe and the last one. So I'm gonna put Auto Bezier on here, okay? And now I'll do the same thing where I shift and hold this. So this is now my match cut in, rapidly decelerating. And then basically just between here and here, I'm gonna make these kind of into like linear. So I'm gonna push this back and let me get in closer here. Okay, and adjust this like this, great. And then I'll go to the end and I'm just gonna take this. This is essentially like a linear keyframe, so it's like that, great. Okay, so now basically, just in case that isn't clear, the B is like scaling up the whole time with a little bit of a drift on it. And then it kind of comes to a stop and then it does that path animation off, okay? So that's moving continuously as well, even though the scale is not part of the out transition. Cool. Get in here, okay, keep moving on this. I got my B, so here's the B null. Okay, so what do I wanna have happen here with the Bs? I guess I could just keep having them scale. So I'm gonna also have this scale, but not as much as the central B. I'm gonna have this scale and drift just a little, like 103. Like 103 there, okay? So a smaller drift forward. And then at the end here, I'm gonna have these also scale at the end, kind of like with the A's where I push them up into the corners, but they don't go like off the screen, okay? And let me quickly adjust this, boop, like that, and take these and Auto Bezier, pull it like that, pull like this to get my match cut end, okay? And now I'll get in here and make these imitate like linear keyframes. Grab this, okay, push it back like that. Cool. And those look pretty good, so I don't think I need to double check those. Oops. Okay, great. So now that should be working. Yep. So the Bs are scaling up the whole time. Great. And also, I think what I want to do is just give them that little rotation gag at the end again. All right. So I'm going to make rotation keyframes for all those. And yeah, it's just always nice to mix in scale and rotation and position together. I just think that always gives like a nice feeling, as long as it doesn't create a mess. Okay. So this one, yep, I'm going to have it rotating to -45. Okay. This one to positive. Okay. This one should be to positive. Yep. And this one to negative. Okay. And let me take those as well. And now I'll do this same adjustment. Oh, and I should mention that I don't think I want these drifting in terms of rotation. No, through the middle. Okay, these are already drifting, just getting bigger, so they never stop. So this doesn't have to be like a rotation drift as well. I don't think that would work as well in this case. All right, so let me take these and I'm gonna pull these into the graph. Oopsies, do that again. Take these, pull these into the graph. Okay, and this should be pretty simple. And take this and just pull this way, and I'll take all these and I'll push them this way, okay? And there's no drift here, so I don't need to do that. Great, so I think that is now done. So let's look at this in the main comp, okay, with the sort of C on there as well. Yeah, and you can see that the continuous motion is really good here. It's like constantly drifting forward. And we could adjust this and make small adjustments and stuff. I'm resisting the urge to tweak this a lot. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is get in here. Now I'm gonna work on my C. I'm gonna set it up and then I'll animate it, okay? So what needs setting up here? Okay, so a bunch of nulls. Basically, these circles need to be put on a null. I think this circle here wants to be connected to that same null. These triangles want a null, and then the C's want a null. Okay, so I want 3 different nulls. So 1, 2, 3. Okay, and I'll call this one circle null. This one will be my triangle null, and this one could be my C null. Again, always important to name these nulls, all right? Put them above themselves. Here's the triangle, cool. And actually, let me parent now the triangle pieces to that and the circle pieces, including the circle stroke, this orange line here. I'm gonna parent to that for now. And then the C's, I'm gonna parent to the C null. Great, okay, so perfect. Now, one thing is that I'm gonna be doing a scale transition here. Let me just turn these nulls off real quick. All right, so I'm gonna be doing a scale transition, and I wanna have some parallax as well, okay? Which means that I kind of want, like, for example, the C in the center to move more than like the C's on the outside, okay? So basically, the way that I see the order is this C, then these circles, and then the triangle, and then the C. So actually the way that I have this set up here is sort of bugging me because I have the triangles above the circles. So I'm gonna take the circle and the circle null, move that up here, okay? So that I feel like it's in the right order. I don't know why I put it that way, okay, great. So let me go to frame 10. This is gonna be another 10 frame transition. And let me just make a composition marker up top here so I know this is frame 10, okay? Great. Now, I want to start this by having the C scale, okay, up to 100. So let me make a scale keyframe, go back here to the beginning, and I'm gonna set this down to something like, I don't know, 50% of its size, all right? And I could even make this maybe smaller, like 20, okay, I don't know. Basically, I just wanna make sure that I'm scaling these things all up so that they feels like they have parallax on them, okay? You know I love the parallax. So I'm gonna make a scale keyframe for my circle null and for my triangle null and for my C null. I just hit Option and S, and let me go back to the beginning and work out this parallax. So I made the C 20% of its size. So the circle null, why don't I make that like 50? Okay, and then the triangle null, I can make that like 60. Maybe I'll make the circle null 40, okay? And then the C null, I can make that like 80, okay? Just so like when it moves up, they're moving at different rates, right? So we get that parallax thing there. Additionally, I'm kind of thinking that it'd be cool if this circle stroke as well had some animation in it. So I'm gonna hit Option and S. Even though this is parented to the null, I think it could have its own kind of animation in there as well. So this can start out like a little bit smaller, right? And that might be interesting or might not. I'm not really sure, okay? So that's a good in. So let me take all of these now, all right? Select all of those keyframes. I'm gonna press F9 and let me jump into my value graph, okay? And this should be pretty simple. Just gonna pull this way, even though probably I'm gonna replace this keyframe with an auto Bezier keyframe. It's probably easier to do this first. Okay, great. Push this back like that. All right, so now we can look at that together and just evaluate the transition from B to C. Yeah. And that's definitely starting to work, okay? And we can do some other things in here. For example, add some counter rotation into those C's so that they kind of match the other sides, right? So let's do that. I'm gonna take the C's here. Oh, and it looks like the anchor points are not in the correct place there. So always a good thing to check that out first. So I'm gonna press Option Command Home to put the anchor point in the center of all those layers. I'll press Option R to set my first rotation keyframe, jump back to the beginning, and we just need these to move the same way that they have been. Okay, so basically counterclockwise up here, right? So I would move this to 45, this to minus 45, this one to minus 45, and this one to positive 45. Cool. And let me go ahead and put some E's on there. And I will adjust those here real quick, like this and like this. Cool. So we can look at that just to see how that one little detail added change. Yeah. That's super fun. Okay, cool. So let me move on with my C animation now and do the transition to the A side. All right, so I'm gonna move back 10 frames and let me make a layer marker just so I know that that's there. Okay, and like I said, this is gonna be a rotation transition. All right, so I'm gonna select everything and I collapse that down. For my C, I can press R, okay, and make a keyframe here and go to the end. Now I'm gonna have this rotate clockwise, okay? And C is kind of right in the center, so I'm gonna have that rotate like a bunch, like, I don't know, 60 degrees, okay? That's a nice even number. So then everything else I also want to rotate. So the circle null, the triangle null, and the C null, okay? I'm gonna press Option R to make rotation keyframes there. Let me go to the end here and kind of do the same thing. So this went 60, so let's have this go like 35, and the triangle null go like 20 maybe, and this go like 15, okay? Something like that. What I want is for the to look like kind of like it's twisting. Yeah, you can kind of see that there. Like the C in the center is rotating more. Okay, so let me grab all these keyframes, F9, and go in here and just put the E's on that I want at the end. Okay, so this pulls really hard this way, and this pushes really hard this way. Okay, great. And so we can watch the whole C thing down. Yeah, that's gonna be really snappy there at the end. But we still want this to continue moving throughout, all right? So how do we do that, all right? Well, I think what we're gonna do is can have it continue to scale. If we actually listen to the C, I'm just gonna press Option Command B just to listen to the C. The C, in terms of the music, it's got the most sustain. Like, listen to this. It's like C, it's kind of an even sustain the whole time. So I think what'll work really nicely with that is if the scale just continues to just drift forward, right? It'll go really nicely with that. So, okay, select everything, press S to reveal my scale, all right? And so let's start here with the C. Okay, same thing kind of that I did before, where I'm gonna have it scaling up the whole rest of the time, and not a ton, maybe to like 108, okay? Something like that. Great, so now I'm gonna take this and make this auto Bezier, and then I'll kind of start over. I'll crank this back this way, and then I'll just get in closer here in the middle somewhere, and I'm gonna set this to be more like straight diagonal line there and here. Okay, so now the C should be drifting, yep, the whole time, and it's kind of slows down right before it it's very slow when it starts rotating, so I don't have to worry about that. Okay, so great, so I did that, and now let me work on the circle null. All right, so this, yep, same kind of thing actually. I'm gonna have this, so that went to 108. So why don't I have this, let's see, do I want this to scale more or less? More, okay. So I'm gonna have this go to like 110. Cool. And let me do the same thing here. This, boop, auto Bezier, set it back, and then push this like this, get in a little closer here. That looks good there. Okay, set this back like here. Great, okay. So now that goes up and drifts as well and drifts farther, okay? We can always adjust that parallax if it's not quite working. Same with all of these, okay? The circle and the triangle null. All right, so let me actually, so this is the circle stroke. Okay, never mind. I don't need that to animate. Okay, so this can go to maybe 115. Yep. Okay, and let me just set this as Auto Bezier here. Pull this back like that. Okay. Pull this back, something like that. Okay, that looks good there. And just take this, push this like this. Awesomeness. Okay. Sort of boring to watch, but hey, you're going to be doing this too. Okay, finally, we've got the C null. Okay, same deal. Go to the end. Now, this one, why don't I make this 125? Oop, that pushes them right off the edge of screen. Okay, 120? Also off, but that's fine because we'll sort of see them go off. Okay. Actually, I know. We want them... Oh, I made it... Sorry, 1,120. I was like, what just happened? Okay, even still, let's see. Yeah, okay, that's fine. We just want to see them start the rotation. Yeah, maybe I'll try that to like 115. How big do they need to still be on screen a little bit? 108? Let's try that, okay? Because I really want to see these as part of the rotation. So maybe the parallax thing doesn't matter so much there. I don't know, hopefully. All right, so Auto Bezier this. Okay, great. And let me get in closer here. And push this down so it's like that. Okay, this here. Great. Cool, so I think that's it now for this. Yeah, and it's got a really nice drift forward. And then a really nice rotation snap at the end there. Okay, cool. So let's look at that in the main composition, all of it. Cool. So let's go ahead and do the rotation transition now at the start for the A. Select all my layers, and I'm just going to collapse these down. I'm going to go 10 frames, and I'm just going to make a layer marker there. Cool. Great. So now with the A, we just have to remember that we have animation here at the end. So we just want to be careful about that. So let's actually start with the rotation at the beginning. Okay, and let me do my rounded rectangles. All right, so I'm going to press Option R to set rotation keyframes there and go back to the beginning. And actually, let me do the A at the same time. Option R, cool. So as you remember on the C side, the C moved the farthest and it was rotating clockwise. So I want the A to also be rotating the farthest and I want it to rotate clockwise, right? So first I would have to rotate it counterclockwise, an equivalent amount, like minus 60. Great. So that'll be turning like this, okay? And then for each one of these, I think it can be rotating even a little bit more, maybe? Let's see. So maybe, okay, that's the large rounded rectangle. So the small rounded rectangle, maybe minus 75. Okay, and then for the large, maybe minus 100, okay? So it would be like this. Maybe that's too much, I don't know. We'll be able to determine that. Well, here, we can always check it out now. Put F9 on there for some ease, grab these, okay, push these back toward the start, as you know, and grab these and pull these like mad that way. So let's check out the A to C transition, just that much of it. Yeah, I think that's pretty fun. I think that's looking really good. And if it's too much animation, we'll change that later. Okay, so let's go back here. All right, so also at the start, we want these circles to be rotating, definitely. Okay, so I'm going to make a rotation keyframe on the null. Let me go back and I'll even do this more. So this would be like minus 135, okay, a bunch. And I thought it'd be kind of fun for these circles if they're not just rotating at the start, but also scaling a little bit. So I'm gonna hold Shift and S, all right, make a keyframe here. And I think it'd be cooler if they kind of like emerge from behind this just a little bit, all right? So something like that, like not a ton, but just like enough so that they're kind of like a little hidden at the start. Maybe like that, I don't know. All right, and I'll take both of these, F9, okay, and let me adjust this real quick together. I'll pull these both this way. I'll take these handles and I'll push them back this way. Boop. Great. Okay, so we got that going on now too. And also, I guess we can work these A's in the corner, right? So I'm gonna choose the null, option R, and here. So this one went 135. So let me try this even more, like minus 150. Okay, so we'll get the same kind of spiral happening where it's like more motion on the outside than on the inside. Okay, so let's see about this. Grab those, F9, boop, go to the graph, pull this way, and push this way. Cool, so let's check that all out in the main comp. Yeah, I think that's really fun. Cool, it's looking really good. So awesome. And maybe it's too much rotation there, but I'm not really sure. I might be tempted to dial this all back a little bit. I know, but I don't want to fiddle here. But it just looks like maybe it's rotating too much. I don't know. So let me take on sec and just try to get this right. So maybe I'll make this like minus 50, and this like minus 60, and this like minus 75, and this like minus 95, and this like minus 110. Whoops, I wrote 10. Minus 110. Okay, cool. So let's see what that looks like. Yeah, it's better. I think also what I'd probably want to do here is something about this is like, it's either too slow or maybe I should stagger some of the keyframes here. So for example, I think the A should be the last thing to finish animating. So maybe I'll push this back and like these back a little too. I don't know, I'm kind of making this up here. It's just, it looked a little bit slower to me as I watched it. I don't know, so I wonder what this would look like. Is that all of them? Yeah. Yeah, I like that better. Okay, cool. And I'm gonna try not to fiddle with this too much, but I am gonna fiddle one more thing. Let me make the A like the most rotated thing. Like, I wonder what happens if the A really rotates a lot. Yeah. Okay, I like that better. Right away, I like that better. Okay, great. So I won't fiddle with this to death, I promise. All right, so what's gonna happen here is if we look at now all of this, look at this whole thing together, right? So it turns and then it widens. And what we want is to have it continue moving here in the middle, which right now it's not, okay? And the way that I want to do this is have this continue rotating, okay? So we do have to be kind of careful with this because, for example, with these circles, I want these circles here to rotate, but I want them to wind up in this position so when they move out, they're moving out very much horizontally and not like on some angle or something, okay? So I need to kind of figure this out. I'm gonna go to this keyframe here, okay, where they're gonna stop rotating and start moving. Okay, well, this is actually the A, so let me go to my circles here. Okay, so here. All right, these are the circles, and it's on this null. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is have this continue to rotate, but what I want is it to wind up here. Okay, so I'm gonna copy and paste this here, which is the 0 degree rotation. Okay, and this is kind of where I want this to end up, and maybe a few frames past the start of when it starts moving or whatever, or maybe right here at the start, I'm not really sure, okay? So basically, in order to get this to counter rotate and land here, I need to take these two rotation keyframes and kind of dial them back a little bit, okay? So that right now, they would rotate back to something like -7, right? So that when they continue to drift forward, they would land here at 0 before moving out horizontally. So I don't know if -7 is correct, but let's just try to like set up the interpolation of this, right? So we can tell, all right? So again, auto Bezier here. Now this is cranked very far, I'm not quite sure why, and actually it looks like this goes over the line there, so I definitely wanna like take this and move this down a little bit. All right, now first I definitely wanna crank this, okay, and then set this so that it's kind of moving at an angle. Maybe I'll move that up a little bit more, okay, push this here, and I'm just gonna get in a little bit closer and just adjust this. Push this back this way, okay, and that looks pretty good on that end, all right? So basically, if we check that out now, it's rotating throughout the whole thing and landing at the 0 point before it starts to move off. Right? And that's fun. And I think what we have to do is just get that speed really right. Right now it just looks kind of slow. This is going to be tricky. All right? So we're just going to have to kind of crank this back and evaluate this to see if it's kind of the right speed. Also, it's bugging me that this stops rotating there, so I think I want to have this drift past that point and be slowing down more. So let's see if I got this better. I'm gonna set this back here. So now that I've adjusted the values, it's changed the line a little bit, so I'm gonna move this down here. Yeah, that's much closer. I'm not sure. Now maybe, again, I'm kind of making this up. Maybe this rotation goes on a little bit too long, so I might want to adjust this so it goes like just a few frames past when it starts moving. Yeah, I definitely, well, what I want is it to really come to a slow stop. So actually, this is wrong. That's what I've done wrong. I want this handle to be pulled like this, okay? To a nice, I want it to actually stop. So let me get in here. Let's make sure this is right now. Okay, so it's sort of like this, I think is what I want. Yeah, okay, but where that stops now, fiddling, okay, maybe a little bit farther past this. Yeah, I just want it to feel like it's just rotating until it starts to move and there's no hitch between it. And that's actually pretty good right there. Cool, fine, great. So what else can we do here? Well, I think everything can continue rotating like that just a little bit. The A, and then these rectangles as well. So let's start with the rectangles, okay? So same thing, I'm gonna make a rotation keyframe here, all right? And then I'm going to go back here. Okay, so that's at 0. So now I'm gonna go back here and select these two and dial these back a little bit. So let's see. The rotation of this circle went back to almost -20. So let me do this less. So like -10 or something, okay? And then let me adjust this. Great. And remember, well, first I'm gonna pull this like this, right? And remember, I do want this to kind of come to a stop here, so that's a little bit different. Let me get in a little bit closer here and adjust this like that, okay? And let me make sure that that's good for my small rectangle. Yeah, I love that. All right, great. So let me do this now for the large rectangle, okay? Okay, this one, the rotation ends here because I staggered it a little, not a big deal. And then, so I might want it to go like there or something, I'm not really sure. Okay, so I'm gonna make a rotation keyframe, that's 0. I'll go back here. This small one I rotated back to -10. So I think the big one I can rotate a little bit more back. Let's see, put this to like -13 maybe? Hard to dial it to that exact figure. There we go. Oh, 12, well, whatever. Let's see how that looks, all right? Make this auto Bezier. Once again, do this. Okay, pull this way, right? And then just pull this so it comes to a nice smooth stop. And I just want to get in here and just make sure that this is lined up just so. Okay, so let's look at that for the large rectangle. Yeah, that's really fun. It's almost like the circles could rotate more now. But I'm going to do this first and we'll watch it all together in the animation before we decide that. Okay, so what else? So the A also rotates, right? So let's keep the A rotating. Let's do the same gag. So maybe about here. I'm going to make another rotation keyframe. I know you've seen me do this like 5 times now, so this is fairly boring. So let me take these two, go here and kind of roll this back a little bit. The A, I don't know. I don't want the A to rotate too much though. I think that'd be kind of distracting because that's sort of the center of attention. So let me try this like 4 or 5 degrees. Cool. That there. Great. Do this one more time. Okay. Get in here, push this back like that. Right. And then have this come to a nice smooth stop. And we can figure out where that should happen. All right, so let's look at all that together. Yeah, so the A is very subtle, but it's still definitely happening. Okay, that's really fun. And let's look at it actually in the main comp so we can hear it with the music. Yeah, I mean, that's looking really fun. What I would say is like maybe here at the start, like I could exaggerate, for example, maybe the rotation of this larger rectangle a little bit here, just to get a little bit more action on that. I don't know. I'm kind of curious about that, how that would affect things. So let me take this, just pull that like that. I think the rotation looks really fun. And I think I'm tempted to adjust the circles so that they move a little bit more too. Let's look at that again and let me see about that. The rotation drift is so nice on the A. I think maybe I overdid it a little bit on that larger rectangle. Sorry, I don't mean to keep fiddling this, but this is the part of the animation in which like you start really dialing it in, okay? So if I undo that, I went from -12, and then I went to 26. So let me just push the diff to something like 19. Yeah, that's good. Okay, and then let me just quickly get in here and make sure this is working. Cool. And let's look at that again. Cool, I love it. Now I'm gonna keep fiddling. I want the circles, I'm gonna see what happens if we move the circles a little bit more, because they're so like brightly colored. All right, here's my circle null, and here's the rotation. So let me take those and dial this back a little bit more at the start as well. At 29.1, let's see. And yeah, it looks pretty good. Okay, oops, this is kind of important, so let me press Z, choose that. Okay, it's a little bit off. Okay, cool. And press this again, and let's look at that. Yeah, that's really fun. For some reason, it looks like the circles and the large rounded rectangle are moving like the same amount of rotation. I just want contrast there, okay? So let me actually dial this one back a little bit, because the focus should probably be on those circles there. So let me dial it back this way. Yeah, to like 12 or 11, great. Hey, and let me adjust this again here really quickly. And get in closer. And just push this like this. Great. Okay. All right. I really don't want to fiddle this to death, but let's check this out. Yeah, I love that, okay? And I just noticed also that I need to adjust my A's here. Okay, those don't do anything either, so let me get in here, and we're just taking some final steps here. All right, so let me find my A null, okay? Yeah, and this, I also wanna have this continue to scale up a little bit, so I'm gonna make rotate, so I'm gonna make a rotation keyframe and jump back to the start here. And this, I want to be very slight, like, I don't know, like 4, okay, great. Let's see how that looks. Get in here. All right, and just do this once. Oops, forgot to make it auto Bezier, so I was only adjusting one side. Silly me, so let me pull this out again and set this like this, something, okay. Pull this back this way. Gonna get in a little closer, boop. Press Z from a zoom tool, V. Okay, just line that up on the line there, okay. And then let me go press K to jump to my next keyframe and pull this like this. Great, okay, good. I think that should be fine. So we can watch that down as well. I think this is almost done. Yeah, I think this is pretty much done now, right? It flows the whole time without ever stopping, right? And it provides really nice transitions between all three of these shots, right? Cool. Okay, cool. I think it's totally done. There's just this one thing that I feel like I need to address. Okay, if we listen to the B shot, there's this kind of beat that happens right in the middle where it goes like shump, like, and nothing moves to that, and it kind of bugs me. So check this out. Right? You hear that right here? There's this kind of thing that happens here, and we don't address it at all in the animation. So I'm like, let me do something to address that. Okay, so let me find exactly the sort of where that's happening. Starting about here. So I'm gonna jump in here and I'm just gonna do like a little animation on the B now, okay? And because it's right in the center, it's really our focus. So I'm gonna make a layer marker here just so I kind of know this is sort of the start of that action, all right? And what I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna animate the position of the B, and I'm gonna separate it, separate the dimensions, and I'm only gonna animate it on the Y, which for some reason I put keyframes on both. Cool. All right, and what I wanna have this, what I want to have the B do is kind of move down here a little, kind of like a little match cut where it moves down and then cuts and then moves down into the position again, right? Kind of around that beat, all right? So move the keyframe up a few frames and I'm gonna move this B down like a little bit, like that much, okay? And then I'm gonna go one more frame and I'm gonna move it up a little bit, also up, and then go 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm just gonna copy and paste this here to put the B back in the middle. Okay, and let me make these E's by pressing F9. Okay, let me jump into the graph for 1 sec. Okay, so here I am. This is the value graph. Is it? Yep, value graph. Sometimes it's hard to tell the difference between. Oh yeah, of course. And then what I'm gonna do is pull this way, and push this way, okay? And then push this in that way, doesn't really matter. And then push that back that way and pull this that way. Okay, so it like accelerates into the cut and then decelerates out of the cut, right? And let's see if we got this right. Yeah. I love that. Okay, so let me go to the beginning, home, and press B. Oops, I pressed N. I pressed N by accident, B, and go to the end of this and press N. And let's watch the whole animation down now that it's done. In conclusion, today's lesson definitely took a little bit longer than I'd hoped for, but I trust that it was valuable watching the animation process unfold. Exploring the intricacies of the value graph as well as auto Bezier keyframes will definitely give you a solid foundation for crafting seamless and continuous motion in After Effects. And as I mentioned in the lesson, your final project is pretty similar to what I worked on today, so I know you're going to get a ton of practice with these techniques. Once you're ready, head over to that video and check it out, and I will see you there.
What happens now?